Good morning. On behalf of the families of the fallen victims and the injured victims of the Parkland massacre, we want to thank you all for being here with us. The tragedy that happened 14 months ago in Parkland still reverberates through this community every single day. And for the families who lost their loved ones and the injured victims, it is still February 14th of 2018. I think it's safe to say that as a community, we've all watched in awe as these families, as these injured victims, both through their grief, through their pain, have identified the issues that are most important to them and have used their voices and have used that platform to try to effectuate real change so that no other family has to go through what they've been made to go through. What we've learned is that the massacre that happened at Parkland isn't something that simply happened. It is the result of rampant failures on the part of the people that have a duty and a responsibility to keep our children safe. It's always been the mission of these families and of these victims to make sure that those who are responsible are held responsible for their failures and are made to be accountable for their actions. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, we were approached by representatives of the different Broward County entities who said all the right things. They wanted to be a part of the solution. They wanted to work with the victims. They wanted to help bring justice. We took them at their word. And the reason why we took them at their word is because we knew that if they didn't keep their word, that there's a courthouse just a few blocks away where we could bring these issues before a jury of Broward County citizens. What we've learned in the last 14 months is that they have no intent to help. And on the contrary, what we found is that they've been taking actions behind the scenes that actually work contrary to the needs of the victims and contrary to bringing justice in this case. We're here today to announce the filing of over 20 different lawsuits, which we filed to hold the entities that are responsible for this tragedy responsible for this tragedy. And we look forward to having our day in court in front of a Broward County jury to air these failures and to make sure that the people who are responsible are held responsible. Thank you.
We'll take questions now. Please be specific as to who you want to speak with.
Mr. Michaels, what are some of the actions that are contrary to helping the victims?
Without getting into all of them, when we were approached at the beginning, we were told in no uncertain terms that they wanted to help, that they wanted to sit down, that they wanted to get this resolved. That certainly hasn't happened, but what we've also learned over time is that they've actually hired a law firm to help lobby behind the scenes against the interests of the victims and trying to stop the resolution from taking place at this time.
Lobby the state government, or lobby where?
Both local and state governments.
Against
the interests of the victims and against the resolution that they promised to help us work towards.
Like against making policy changes, or against, I'm trying to understand what they're lobbying against.
Primarily against resolution of the claims and resolution of the lawsuits, which we see as being part and parcel of trying to effectuate change. It's easy to say people want change, but when there's actually impact from their failures, when people are actually held responsible from their failures, not only does it ensure that the people who committed those failures are going to be held responsible, but it's a message to other entities, other police departments, other school boards, other behavioral centers that if they don't do what they're supposed to do, there's going to be real repercussions.
Who specifically is hiring these lobbyists behind the scenes? What entities? Feel free to look that up.
Various defense entities, and we don't know exactly which of the entities have hired them, but we do know that they were hired by at least one, if not multiple, of the entities who are defendants in this lawsuit.
You said there were some who were not taking questions, so there's a couple behind you taking questions?
Ms. Walden, Mr. Kelly are...
Before we switch over, if that's okay. How do you plan to get around the state caps on the dollar amount in damages? And is that what you were referring to when you were talking about the lawsuit?
Well, the state caps are part and parcel. Anytime there's a case against a state entity, there's what are called sovereign immunity limits, which cap the amount that a court can order the defendants to pay. But you can still settle a case in excess of those caps, and that's appropriate, and a jury has the right to return whatever verdict the jury believes is appropriate. There's a process that goes through when it then goes to Tallahassee. What we have seen is that the legislature and other voices in Tallahassee desire to do what's right. They desire to make sure that these families receive justice, but they can't get there until the defendants, until Broward County do what they have to do to get it to that point. And we were under the impression from our conversations that they were going to work with us prior to this session to get the cases into a posture where the legislature could deal with them, but that was another thing that didn't happen.
You were talking about, at least in the news release, that this is a response to inaction by the Broward County School Board. Can you talk specifically about what the school board has done or has not done that has led to these lawsuits?
Well, the school board was one of the first entities to come to us and to talk about how important it was on their half to sit down to come to a resolution. And what we've really gotten, we have reason to believe that they were the entity that is involved behind the scenes with hiring the defense lobbyists, but also they have never sat down to work with us. You can't just give a claim up to the legislature. There first has to be communication, there has to be a want, there has to be the desire to sit down and come to some sort of settlement that could be approved. They've never shown any desire to take the steps towards working there, and they've had 14 months to do so. As a result of their inaction, as a result of us learning that their words were nothing more than words, they no longer have that option. Now it's going to be a jury of citizens of Broward County that make that decision.
So we're talking about like a compensation fund of some sort,
Yeah.
right?
Let me jump in here, just so to be clear.
Sir, do you mind waiting?
You step in front of the mic.
Yeah, otherwise you
Sure.
won't be able to hear you.
Can you tell us your name?
Sure, my name is Bob Kelly, and I represent Lori Aladeff and her family, and several of the other victims that were injured, shot and injured in this incident. But what I was going to say is this. Everyone in this room and everyone watching knows that this is an open and shut case, right? Not only against Nicholas Cruz, who has confessed for what he did, but also against the school board and the Broward Sheriff's Office and all of the bungling bureaucrats who let this thing unfold and who refused to accept any responsibility for what happened. And so our clients, despite the fact that all the lawyers in this room and all the clients in this room have been working for months now to try and reach a peaceful resolution of this without having to go to court, we are now being forced into court to get justice for our clients. And it's wrong. It's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. They're out hiring lobbyists to fight against these families. They're going to hire lawyers to fight against these families in court, and it's wrong. It's a waste of taxpayers' dollars, and it should not be tolerated. But that's what we have to deal with, and that's why these lawsuits are being filed today. We're at the end of our rope. It's been over a year now with no relief for these families. And now these kids are going to be drawn into court. They're going to have to give depositions. They're going to have to appear in front of a jury. We're going to call in citizens to serve on the jury, right? Hundreds of people for months and months, possibly years, to hear evidence in a case that I said initially is open and shut.
Can you talk about what resolution you were seeking over the last year that hasn't been?
Sure. As Mr. Michael said, the local governmental agencies and the legislature have every opportunity to step in and say, you know what? We made a mistake. We want to do right. We want to take care of you all. And they can create a fund to compensate the families. It's as simple as that. And we have been told that the local governmental agencies were in favor of that because they didn't want to go to court. But what we have now learned is that they are hiring lobbyists behind the scenes to actually defeat this proposal. So it's my understanding that the governor and most of the legislators are in favor of getting this resolution, but the local governmental agencies, the school board, the sheriff's office, are opposing it. So that's why we had to file suit.
Can you say specifically what you were negotiating, what you were attempting to obtain through these negotiations, a monetary amount, collateral benefits? What can you?
Sure, that's a great question. What can we obtain? First of all, you can't turn the clock back and bring these kids back to their parents, right? Which is what anybody would want. And so the only thing that our justice system allows is for monetary compensation for the families. And so at the end of the day, that's what will happen in a civil case. A jury will hear this overwhelming evidence against the sheriff's office and against the school board, and they will return a verdict, I'm sure, for multiple millions of dollars for each of the families that lost a child, and multiple millions of dollars for each of these kids that were shot and are still alive, surviving this emotional torment today. And so what we've been trying to do is to come up with a global settlement package that could bring this matter to a close. And there's no reason it can't be done. I mean, the legal cost alone to defend these lawsuits, these 22 lawsuits and more that will be filed, are going to be multiple millions of dollars. So it's wrong. It's a waste of taxpayers' money to force us into court.
So in effect, you're saying that what you're seeking is multiple millions. Would you say it's in the tens of millions and the hundreds of millions? I mean, I don't want to throw a figure out there, but could you give us a sense of the ballpark?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that obviously that's an issue, right? And so that's something has been discussed in Tallahassee, and the numbers go back and forth, the dollar amounts go back and forth, but they still haven't come up with any reasonable number, in fact, any number at all, to present to the families. And so we have nothing concrete to take to our clients.
So is it just the lobbying that's compelling you to file these lawsuits, or is it the fact that you can't get to the number you want?
No, it's the fact that we have learned that they are working behind the scenes to defeat this legislation. We have been sitting here hoping that our clients are not going to have to go into court. But listen, we're ready, right? We're ready to go into court and present this case to a jury. Make no mistake about that. But it's just a waste of taxpayers' money and people's time to have to go through that.
Is there a bill that has been filed, and what is the bill number?
Yeah, good question. There is a bill that's been filed. I'm 65 years old. I can't remember the number, okay? But there is a bill that's been filed.
Is your client Lori Olivet taking any steps to, prevent a potential conflict of interest or appearance of conflict, given that she is on the school board?
Yes, of course, right? Lori is in New York today, right? Otherwise she would be here. And as you know, Lori is a member of the school board now. She was not on the school board when this happened. But she has not rested since the day this happened to try and affect change in this county and to try and affect change in the school board. She obviously cannot be involved in any kind of discussion about a settlement or a resolution of this case. But she's been working behind the scenes, not behind the scenes, but been working with her foundation and as a member of the school board to make schools safe again. That's her primary goal.
Is there anything in these lawsuits that would address the safety angle? You talk about the failures at multiple levels. Are there elements in there that would address what needs to be done in order to prevent another shooting like this?
In a civil case, we do not have that power. We just don't have the power. So no, the answer to that question is no.
You were saying it's been a year at this point.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's Mrs. Olson taking the question.
Sorry, what was the question?
I'm noticing you back there. It looks like you have something on your heart. Can you help us understand your emotions?
Well, the person ultimately responsible for this is sitting in Broward County Jail. But everybody knows that Broward County lifted checkpoints and knocked down barriers that could have changed the outcome of February 14th. And to our family and our son, this lawsuit will bring some accountability to the table. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the frustration that families are going through as you're going through this process and learning, what the attorney was saying, there's people perhaps working behind the scenes in this.
And do you mind taking a step closer to the mic? So sorry.
And you can look that way. So.
Every day is a struggle for the children that were, at least I can speak for the children that were injured. And I'm certain for the families that lost their children and their spouses. It's a daily struggle. They are not the people they were before February 14th. Yes.
Can you share a little bit from your heart, instead of maybe more the general debate of all the families, your experience, your family, your son, what it's been like, the terror and the torture for you last year and your son?
My son didn't go to school today. He couldn't. And we have many days like that now. I am so sorry. It's very hard for me to speak. Maybe my language won't speak a little bit for me.
The damage to these kids, the ones who survived, it never will go away. They're never going to see the world the same way. So they'll never see school the same way. They'll never have a sense of security and safety. And the trajectory of their lives is completely altered. Everything that they will do academically, personally, professionally, the choices that they're going to make have all been changed. So our hearts go out to the families who lost their kids. But the surviving kids will carry this for years, for 60, 70 years from now. So it's very hard for the Olsons to talk about this because it affects the entire family. It's not just the child. It's not just the parents. It's their entire family. So I think that's what Lisa's trying to say. And it's just still, a year later, impossible to talk about.
You guys, your name, Dylan?
John Layton, represent the Olsons.
Is it unusual or unexpected that the school board would lobby against this legislation, given that legally they're looking out for the financial interests of the school district?
Yes, it's incredibly unexpected under the circumstances. And the
Todd, step a little closer.
it's incredibly unexpected under the circumstances. There is no question that their failures allowed this to happen. There are going to be bad actors out in the world. There's reasons why schools, why police departments, why behavioral health centers have responsibilities and have legal duties. It's because they know that there are going to be people who have ill intent. The school's failures, the police department's failures, they have been aired in every public forum possible. Everybody is aware of them. Obviously, they're the core of the allegations in these lawsuits. The school board understands that if by not settling this case, by not bringing closure, they're going to have to defend those failures. They're going to have to spend taxpayer money to defend each and every one of these lawsuits. It's more unusual in a situation where they took it upon themselves. We have all the plaintiffs in communication with each other, and they came to us as a group off the bat without any prompting to say, we want to get this done, we want to do something, we want to make this right, we want to be a part of the solution. Those are their words to us, and here's what's going on behind the scenes. They just don't match.
Can you talk about the deadline pressure in terms of the sessions wrapping up at the end of May, and then it's going to be another year, this is all you said?
Well, we had the question about whether a bill was filed, and it is incredible, and the family members all understand the steps, which the unusual steps which members of the legislature took. Normally what's called a claims bill or a compensation fund isn't filed until after an underlying settlement, but to make sure that if some conclusion was reached, an underlying conclusion, an underlying settlement, in the interim, they went ahead and filed the bill prior to that even happening, so that if we were able to accomplish something with the local actors, we'd be able to get that resolved this legislative session. By them not keeping their word, by them not stepping up to the plate, by them not sitting down, there are procedures which have to happen, and they cannot happen until that underlying settlement is effectuated. So what it's really done is it's taken the power away from the legislature to do anything. We don't expect anything's going to happen this year. And at this point, our intention is to bring these cases, to litigate these failures, and to let a jury decide.
And when you say them, you mean school board, right? Them aren't cooperating, not the school board, not the legislature.
Right. The legislature has been completely cooperative. And they've shown a real desire to do what they can. The problem is that they can't start acting until the school board, until the police department, until the underlying defendants have given them what they need to get to that next step.
Are the school board and the sheriff's office the only defendants, or are there other entities in next to which, what are they?
There's the school board, there's the sheriff's office, there's Mr. Medina, who is the monitor at the school, there's Officer Peterson and Henderson Behavioral, which is a health center that had an obligation, that was seeing Mr. Cruz, that had an obligation to Baker Act him if he was showing the signs and symptoms that he could be a harm to himself or to other people. He certainly was exhibiting those symptoms that it's evident in their records, and they never took the steps to step in and give him the intervention that he needed.
What about DCF or the FBI?
They are not defendants in the lawsuit that are being filed right now.
Could I just jump in and add one thing in response to your question? It's never too late, right? There's still 3 weeks left in the legislative session, and everybody knows that almost everything happens at the very last minute, on the very last night, of the very last hour of the legislative session. So they still have an opportunity to do the right thing by these families and get this resolved, and all these lawsuits could be dismissed, and we could bring some closure and some peace to these people that have gone through this tragedy in Broward.
Sir, as sad as this may be, isn't it the fiduciary duty of the school board and the sheriff's office to protect the taxpayers' money as much as they possibly can?
Absolutely, 100%, which is why would they go out and spend millions of dollars on attorney's fees to defend cases that they know they're going to lose, and that the verdicts that the juries are going to return are going to be far and above anything that these people would take to settle these things. They do have a fiduciary duty, and they're not fulfilling it.
Do you have any particular reason that you know of that the school board and the BSO have been reluctant to meet you halfway, to meet you at a resolution?
I have no idea why they did it in about face. All I know is what they tell us to our face, and then what we hear is happening behind the scenes.
Mr. Dorkin, perhaps can we hear from you?
My name is Mitchell Dworet. I'm in a very unique position. I dropped my children off that morning. I told them I love them, and I went to pick them up. My son is Nicholas Dworet. He was killed in the 3rd room. My other son is Alexander Dworet. He was in the 1st room. He was injured. He saw children killed, and he lost his brother. This is a life sentence for me. It's every day. It's 14 months. I want accountability. I'm not going away. I'm in for the long haul. This is not normal. This is not right. There were failures. I want to be in court. I want to see who, what, when, where, how, why.
Mr. Dworet, and the other families, if anybody wants to speak to this, how would this money help you if any of these entities?
Accountability is what I want. That's part of it.
Can I imagine medical bills, like actual logistics, that sort of thing?
So, thank you. This is Michael Goldfarb. I represent the Dwart family. The purpose of any civil lawsuit is to bring about accountability, justice, change. Talking about any money or any compensation will be used as the Dwart family deems appropriate for any future charitable foundations. Mr. Dwart and his wife Annika created a foundation for Nick, who was a swimmer, who had a scholarship to go swim in college. So the funds will be used for purposes that the families deem appropriate.
Sir, can you perhaps talk about the frustration that you feel knowing that you thought that the school board, as they were saying, was going to be helping in this process, and then you learned that perhaps they have people working to lobby for the opposite?
I just know what happened that day to my family. If you have children, you cannot imagine the life that I lead now.
Any other questions?
Are there any other family members who wanted to add on to anything that we asked that didn't reach tonight? We would love to hear from you